And now, weighing in out of the blue corner, Josh the Punk Thomson. 100%. And on the other mic, he weighs in from the red corner, Big John McCarthy.
Well, how you doing, everyone? Welcome to the Weighing In podcast, where my man Josh Thomson is sitting there trying to show you his jawline and his and still, because we are and still numero uno, the Weighing In podcast. And we have got a special treat for you today.
All right, but before we get to the Chael Sonnen interview, I want you guys to go to onlyfans.com/weighing-in, onlyfans.com/weighing-in. Subscribe to us over there. It is free, you guys. It is free. Subscribe to us over there at onlyfans.com/weighing-in.
We have the one and only American gangster. That's right, the West Lynn bad guy. Chael Sonnen is here on the show to talk with us today. Yes, yes, yes. We have got the man, the myth, the legend, the man who can talk beyond the abilities of the mortal man. We have the West Lynn gangster, the American gangster, Chael Sonnen. What's up, Mr. Bad Guy?
You guys have put me in such a great spirit already. Thank you. Thank you for the greetings. I miss talking to you guys. I am so excited about this. By the way, I got some questions for you. I mean, should I just start right into it?
Yeah, just jump right into it.
PFL, Bellator, rumors everywhere. Do you got inside scoop?
I love you. I love you for actually thinking that, because I was going to ask you, hey, what have you heard?
Chael, let me just tell you this, okay? I am not media, so I don't have 13 trophies behind me. I can't really break stories, like some people. So I got to be honest. I also enjoy my job, and so I tend to keep those kind of things to myself. Sure. So I want to make sure that I can, if it doesn't happen, that I still have a job. So even if I did know, Chael, you and I are boys, I probably wouldn't say anything.
I'm going to tell you right now, Chael, he doesn't know a goddamn thing, right? Look, right now, we know exactly what has been put out in the media. We haven't been talked to by really anyone or anything like that. So we don't know.
I had
what's going to happen is going to happen.
Oh, for sure. And I had a very meaningful tip the other day from a very reliable source, and it wasn't really anything that you guys haven't already heard, other than he was very specific that the ink is dried, that the is done, and the announcement is coming Wednesday. So,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, that probably isn't anything more than we've all heard, or at least close to it. Seems to keep on changing. I guess, moreover, the reason I ask, I will be very curious what then happens. At one point, along with these rumors, was that Bellator would still run for 1 year as Bellator. Then there'd be some cherry picking of the fighters and the contracts, and they would all be pulled over to one to the PFL. But I don't know how much I believe that. Like, Bellator is such a large name. Just for example, I'm selling out arenas in multiple countries on a regular basis. I don't know if that would be the best approach to shut down that brand. It's just food for thought. Like, we'll all learn something, but this happens so rarely in business. There's really nobody that you can turn to and ask and go, hey, when you did this, like, there's not a lot of this has ever been done. So I'm very fascinated and curious.
You can go back and look at, like, the UFC has bought multiple promotions. If you go down the list, WFA, Pride, Strike Force, WEC, all these, and they always did them a little bit different, but they always did them Pride was different in the fact that they thought they were going to get contracts out of it. They didn't really get a lot of contracts out of it. And the Strike Force deal is the one that I would look at and say, it might be. Strike Force had certain contractual obligations that when you buy it, those contractual obligations are still there. Bellator would be in that same position. But I just look at it and think, the PFL has what they've brought themselves up on is that, $1 million tournament format that they go by. And that's great, but I think it's great for your up and coming fighters. I think the guys that have established themselves, the guys that win those, they get to move on to that new pay-per-view platform that the PFL is trying to put out. And I think that's where you cherry pick fighters, and you can, put some great matchups in there, but I don't know what they're going to do. And Josh is going to sit here and give you a load of shit, but he doesn't know either.
Yeah.
No, look, Chael, in an ideal world, right? You and I are probably on the same page. In an ideal world, I said this on Rogan's show back in 2020, in February of 2020, when I was on the show. I said, look, in a world, I would love to have an Olympics every other year or every 2 years. You take the best fighters because and
it doesn't have to be champions.
Yeah, the champions. It doesn't have to be champions, but you want to put number 2 versus number 5. You know, like guys like that. You want to see those fights. And I said those fights. I think after the first one, or maybe even the first one, will do really well. But then the other ones may be a little lackluster. But then they'll pick back up. If you had like an Olympics every 2 years, or like a World Cup, where you took the best fighters from every organization, you had them fight. It didn't have to be champions, but maybe you headlined it with one champion versus another champion, and like Rogan was saying, I don't think it would do well. And I was pushing back a little bit on it because I believe it would. I think it would do very well because there's fights like we've constantly said, Stephen Thomson versus MVP. I would love to see that fight. There's just fights out there that could be made that
we still might
love. There's fights I would love to see made that I know this would be really action packed. But in terms of the fact that if PFL does buy Bellator, I think it will happen before the end of the year. There's really, to be honest, there's no rush before the end of the year because Showtime's already come out publicly and said that they're wrapping up their Showtime boxing and I believe Bellator by the end of the year, all their combat sports. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't push it to another one of their entities in terms of like if it's CBS Sports or whatever, if it doesn't go through. They may still do that, but they're getting it off of Showtime is what they publicly have already said. So if I'm the PFL, there's really no rush to probably get it done. I've heard this last week. I heard this week. You hear weekly that it's getting done this week. But at the end of the day, there's really probably no rush until the end of the year, before, around, December, it probably gets inked in there, somewhere in there. That being said, what you're talked about is I would love to see Showtime. I would love to see Bellator and PFL run side by side. And you take, like John was saying, their fight-in tournament would be almost like a Dana White Contender Series, what they do now. You have your low-level fighters coming in, and then you have your, I don't want to use Bellator as an example because it's owned by if it was owned by PFL, but you have your real shows, your real fights, people that want to see the best fighters in your organization fighting each other. You have that, and then you do I still really do enjoy the one weight class a year tournament. I love that. I love that format because there's new stars that come in periodically that you're like, man, I'd love to see this guy come in. And look at Usman Nurmagomedov. Fantastic. But he wasn't here until about a year and a half ago. He literally just came onto the scene and now he's already the champ and now he's defending his title, all these things. So there's a lot of fight. I'd love to see him and AJ McKee. There's fights out there. Shabley's really catching people off guard, on how good he is. I mean, like there's such good lightweights in Bellator that you can run a tournament every year in one weight class, not all of them, because people just don't keep up with it. We are all too busy.
2 tournaments.
It's too much, John. It's too much.
2 tournaments.
It's just too much. We are so busy, Chael. Look at, you were talking about it on air the other day. I didn't even know the fight was at 2:00. You know what I mean? Like, it's true. Like, we're just so caught up in our everyday lives. Like, the fights are an afterthought. And they're like, oh, wait, the fights are on tonight. Shit, let's watch. Unless it's somebody that we are really, really captivated by. We know these 2 top level competitors or fighters are going to be in the cage at the same time together. Those are things that motivate us to tune in and buy the pay-per-views. I don't see that all the weight classes tournament system really succeeding outside of it being a fight in to get into the bigger show. But financially, it doesn't make any sense to run 2 organizations. It just doesn't. Everywhere you look at it, it just doesn't make any sense. Now, if they can have it where Bellator can stand on its own, which it's been doing lately. What's that?
My man Chael was champion in that organization, the WEC. I don't care what anyone says. You were definitely the light heavyweight champion of that organization. And the UFC and the WEC ran simultaneously for how
different
long?
Weight classes, John. They didn't have the.
I totally understand what you're saying. I understand, but it can be done.
Yeah, and I'll tell you guys this. I think why I asked the question, my curiosity, I believe, is a little different. I have to know everything. I have to know everybody's business. Like, I can't control that side of me. I have to, more specifically, why are you doing it? Let me just give an example. When Pride got purchased, the UFC came out with the story that we did it to get these fighters contracts, but that was not true at all. That was just a story. They bought Pride and saw a $70 million value in taking them off of pay-per-view. And
True.
I only bring that to you because I would be so curious. The rumor that we heard, and again, I'm going back to my most recent source. We'll see if it turns out. It only turns out to be true if they do make an announcement on Wednesday. That was a paramount a point that he was making. But I'll share this with you. The 300 million rumor that we heard, according to this source, it's closer to 500 million. And I would just share that I'm so curious what the value is. I'm so curious what they're doing. And I even asked him that, and he goes, well, to get all the contracts. It's like, I don't think that that's true. I just don't think that there's matches. And Scott Coker is more than willing to do what's called a loan out. You pay him $100,000 and then you can borrow his fighter. He did that with MVP to bare knuckle, just for an example. You could have as many as you wanted and you would never reach the $500 million mark. You could pay that $100,000 loan out fee. I'm only suggesting that that's not it. And I'm curious what it is. I'm so curious what from a business standpoint justifies the price and all the effort that you're going, particularly to a competitor who just lost its North American distribution deal.
I totally agree with you when you take a look at a lot of it, but you can also take a look and say, not everything is done with cash. Okay. Now there's a value to everything, but not everything is, it's how much money did you put out, or how much are you, I'm giving you stock options or things like that. So someone has the ability to, maybe if this works, it grows with it and they get even more money. Who knows?
Sure. Yeah.
I think a lot of things are being negotiated.
I would love to know.
Everything I think has kind of already been negotiated.
So
from
would
what we've
we.
all heard. But yeah, we'll figure it all out. Chael, there's a lot going on.
No, we have. I have one question. What does it feel like to be the lightning rod?
Oh.
What does it feel like?
Oh, boy, I don't know. I will tell you, are we talking about the Ariel interview? Because I will tell you, I was very caught off guard by that. I did not enjoy that. And even there was a part where I finally said, I have to go. Yeah. But the I have to go wasn't just to hang up in an interview. My throat hurt. I was losing my ability to speak. I'm still feeling it where I'm having to kind of scream at you guys a little bit. But I was what do you call it? You get hoarse or you laryngitis. I was starting
because you're
to
tense.
feel this. I mean,
kind of a little bit angry.
I can't speak anymore. I was tired. I was sweating. I was all these different things. And I kind of do feel like I was owed an apology, though. Like, as I go back and look at that, I think I was right. I felt as though I only made 2 points. And it was to look at the fight from the two sides. One is the competitiveness, which greatly exceeded expectations. Yes. And my other point was the financial side, which met expectations, which rarely, in fact, the first time I've ever observed in this space, they set out to lose. They were very willing they were going to lose. They
knew they were losing money.
This was an expense, and the payoff for them was just to be able to host the event. So I felt like I was right on both of those points, whether we ended up screaming at each other or not. Those were the only 2 points that I tried to make. I don't know where I would be wrong. Both of those I would stand by today.
I'm being honest. I'll ask you a question out of this, but I thought both of you were right. I thought you were right in the points that you were trying to make. You were absolutely right. It's a one-off, and it's not the normal entity that is willing to lose the amount of money that they're losing in having that show. Ariel is trying to sit there and say, but if as long as they're willing to lose it, they can do it over and over again. Well, no, there comes a point, I don't care how rich you are, you don't want to lose more money. But your whole point was right. But I got to ask you this, because it's the one thing when it first started that I looked at and I was like, why did you do that? He basically, in my opinion, kind of, he
pigeonholed you.
He confronted you, and he actually tried to make it like, you were wrong about something you said. And I'm being honest, I said the same thing that you said. I went and said, when I watched, look, I know Francis. I love Francis. He's a great guy, with everything that I've ever been around him to do. But I thought that Tyson Fury would be an incredibly hard fight for him, that he wouldn't be able to really touch Tyson Fury much. It's a different sport. And I said, I just don't see Francis doing very well in this fight. And afterwards I said, I was wrong. And I was, but he tried to, it was almost like because he tried to say that it was a good thing and you didn't, I'm going to make you, eat some pigeon here or something. I don't know. It seemed like, why are you being that way when you guys actually were guys that worked together on Ariel and the Bad Guy?
Sure. Well, and I felt that too, but I wish that's where the conversation would have gone, because there was something very incumbent to give Francis heaping amounts of praise, not to mention potential controversy. I mean, we had 3 judges. They didn't agree with each other. There was no 2 alike scores. And it's more fascinating for me, guys. How did this happen? Because this is the second time I've seen the greatest ever not getting beat up by a guy that has never done it. I mean, whether the Floyd and Conor that went to Floyd, but Floyd got beaten up by a guy with no experience, and he was the greatest ever. And then you have Tyson Fury, who's the greatest. And that was such an interesting one. Like, the boxing apologists were so quick to try to turn to, for example, Fury's layoff. And that would be what this whole story was about, except Francis had a bigger layoff. Or it would be with the size, except in this case, because that's what it was with Conor and Floyd. Well, Conor was so much bigger. In this case, Fury weighed in heavier. Or if you were to look at the age, in this case, Francis is the older. I mean, it was such an interesting thing. And John, I fully did see it. Maybe I'm not giving MMA guys enough credit. Maybe I don't give myself enough credit. But when I look at that and think, okay, I got to go into the boxer that's the best in the world at my weight class, and I've never boxed, that's a very intimidating circumstance. But Francis went out there and handled it. He did it calmly. He held up 30 minutes. I mean, he held up for that. I was at Andre Ward's first professional fight. It was here in Portland in 2005. He was coming off a gold medal in 2004. Yep. So his whole life he had done 3-rounders. But his first professional fight, which was an undercard of Mayweather versus Sean Bay Mitchell, it was scheduled for 4 rounds. It went to all 4 rounds. But, I mean, this is what you do. Like, to make believe that you can go from never having done it, including amateur, to 10 rounds, that is an impossible thing for me to believe, which is so impressive that Francis did it and so impressive that Conor with the same distance. Like, what is the miss here? Is it awkwardness? Is it just about power?
I think the miss is this, is that those boxers are fighting with fear. A fear of being the only boxer at a high-end level of losing to someone who has never fought boxing. That's their fear. And both of those fighters fought very timidly. They both were very cautious. They knew they were the better boxers. They just chose not to pull the trigger and leave themselves out there in fear of getting put down like Tyson Fury. Okay. I mean, Tyson was able to get back up. It just was, it's that fear. It's so hard. Chael, you know, we've been in that cage where we walked in, we're like, man, there's times where I've been afraid going, man, I could lose this fight. Now, that's been a lot of times, but losing to someone who you know is not on your level. If I was to go out there and fight someone, if you're ranked number 2 or 3, you're fighting for the title, all of a sudden now you're fighting a guy who's not ranked. It really does make you, and I'll give you a classic example. I just got done fighting Benson Henderson. Okay. If I beat him, I wait for Pettis to fight for the UFC title because it was already offered to me. I fight that fight. I lose. My next fight's Bobby Green. Bobby Green's not ranked at the time, where he was ranked like number 13 or 14. And they were like, look, let's just get you back on track. Let's get you this fight. Took the fight. Fought super conservative. Didn't really fight hard. I didn't fight the best I could have. And it showed. I ended up losing a split decision in that fight. And, and the rest is history. You just don't fight the way you're supposed to fight. And I'm not taking anything away from Francis. What he did was remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. I love the fact that, but there's a flip side to what I just said about the pro boxers. The flip side is this. The guys that go in there like a Conor, they've already made out. I'm fighting a sport that I'm not supposed to win. There's no concerns. There's no cares. Okay. And if I do land him, and I said this for months when this fight.
There's one concern. Everyone's concerned with being face down.
This is true.
Everyone's
you are concerned about that, but if you go back,
because no one wants to look
back and watch Conor, you go back and watch Francis. They didn't have a lot of output. I think both of them were concerned about potentially getting tired in another man's sport. Sure. That's fear. That's what kind of scares you a little bit. But both of them fought very conservative. But when I'm looking at what Francis and what Conor did, both of them, they could just let it go. They could let it fly. It didn't matter. I've already won. Everyone now, I'm not supposed to win this fight. It's very important to take that in consideration because there is no concern. Like, you're just, look, this is fun, especially someone like Conor. And with Francis, there is, and I had said this months before, all he needed to do was wobble Tyson or put him down, and it will change his life. Change his life because he's got the power to do it. You know what I mean? And the Conor thing was different because, to me, Floyd was such a technician. The best guys in the world weren't able to hit him. That's a speed. That's an athleticism. That's just years and years of doing it. Years. Since the time he was a young boy. Tyson Fury is a bigger guy, a little bit bigger of a target, easier to hit. Those kind of things. He leaves himself open. He goes out there and makes mistakes. He has been dropped. Okay? Francis got the power to do it. So I said, look, if Francis can get this fight, if he can drop him, if he can rock him, if he can wobble him, that automatically opens him up to what ifs. What if we gave him more time to train? What if we put him with someone like an Anthony Joshua, who people say is a little suspect of a chin? Like, now there's talk that we can make other fights for him. And that's where we're at right now.
Hey, and speaking of that, guys, Michael Bisping announced that Francis is going to take that December 23rd date, which once upon a time belonged to Fury and Usyk. He didn't say who the opponent was going to be, and nobody really grabbed that and ran with it. Nobody really confirmed that announcement. But is that true? Is Francis?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't either. So. I feel like we would have heard about it.
We talked with Francis's trainer, Eric Nixick. He's
last night
on our podcast. And he said he's taking a couple of months off.
Okay. Right.
So I don't think so.
Hey, and good for him, right? To enjoy a honeymoon after this. Yeah, he certainly deserves it. By the way, speaking of Coach Nixick, is this the hottest coach in MMA right now? I mean, he should be.
Yeah.
He should win the award at the World MMA Awards for Coach of the Year, hands down, correct?
Okay, look at really, what's the World MMA Awards? Let's be honest, okay? It's a popularity contest, and I've won it, but it's a popularity contest. It's really not the person many times that deserves based upon their performance or what they've done. Many times it's because the people voting don't know anybody but that one name, and so they mark and check that box on that one name. But you're right, Eric Nixick absolutely is a guy that deserves to be Coach of the Year. No doubt about it. He's done a phenomenal job.
I feel like that's the correct answer. Like, even if another coach got it, he'd kind of be looking around going, well, hey, thank you to everybody. But he would know. I mean, is there anybody that can touch? And why is this guy so red hot? It's really incredible. You know, he had to come into his own under very tough circumstances, which is his mentor, Robert Follis, God bless him, died.
Yes.
So, I mean.
Well, yeah, his first mentor, think about this, Sean Tompkins. That was when that gym opened up, Sean Tompkins was there, Robert Follis wasn't there. And Eric came in. And I remember him working, because I remember a couple of times I was in there and I was doing some sparring stuff, and I didn't know who he was, and we kind of hit it off, and he was really a nice guy, and he was all into knowledge. He wanted to know things. And then Sean Tompkins died. And then in comes Robert Follis, and Eric really, you know, he grabbed on to Robert and sucked every bit of knowledge he could from Robert and things. But the thing that Eric did is, you know, Randy's always been his mentor also. And it's the mental side, because I tell people all this time, and you know, you have famously have said there was one guy you couldn't beat, and it was Randy Couture, you know, and I always laughed at that, because, you know, you've worked out with him. I've worked out with him. And it was one of the amazing things with Randy, and I don't know if you want to go off it, but he was not the strongest guy. He wasn't that strong. He was not fast. He wasn't anything that he didn't hit that hard. But goddamn, he was smart, and he never stopped. And he had lungs for days. It's like, how do you have lungs? We both had asthma, and I was like, how is it that I get asthma and you don't? But he just was super intelligent in breaking things down and knowing what he had to do, and even psychologically breaking someone down during the contest. And that's what Eric took, and that's what he uses. And he uses that psychology all the time with his guys, both in practice, in the fights, and it's made him special because they believe in him.
Sure. And what incredible irony, if you will. But you take Randy Couture, and one thing about Randy, I mean, he had a gold belt that said he was the best in the world, but he did not have a black belt in anything. He didn't even have a brown belt in anything. It was really fascinating of what a competitor he was and how much he, enjoyed the battle, but also that he believed in himself. I mean, he believed he could go out and find a submission over a black belt in jiu-jitsu, just for example. And it really was incredible. And then you look at Francis. You go, well, I don't know of any belt that Francis has, for that matter. I don't know of any boxing background Francis had, other than he aspired and wanted to do it. It really is an incredible thing. When Randy started the gym Performance Quest, it got shortened to Quest later, but Performance Quest, he had a little bit of a different philosophy that didn't overly catch on. But as you look back, it does start to look like Randy was right, which is this whole thing is based on performance, not about what techniques you know, not about what you've mastered in takes. Can you beat that guy's, your skills beat that guy's skills? Yes or no? It's just about the performance. And it kind of is fascinating that one, Randy did so well, and now you've got Francis, disciple of Randy, doing so well with how those specific backgrounds. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, these guys, I mean, but Randy, when he first came into the sport, was talking about like the itch wasn't done. He wanted to keep wrestling. He wanted to keep fighting. The sport came right at the right time. I got to be honest. It pretty much saved my life because, at the time, you don't really know what you want to do. Chael, like you know that we were competitive in sports coming in through high school, college. You wrestled at University of Oregon, being competitive all those years. You get out and go, do I really want to go work in a cubicle? Do I want to just be in this office all day? No, you wanted to do something else, and you got to scratch the itch while it's still there because when we get to this age now, we don't have the desire.
Look, we're all in cubicles.
Yeah, I don't.
All three of us right now.
I don't get up though. I don't get up and go, man, I can't wait to go run miles now. I don't have that itch anymore. And so it's remarkable to see that Randy did it for so long. Yourself did it for so long. Myself. I mean, you and I were fighting on some of the same cards up in Portland under Steve Boyd. Remember that guy?
Steve, I do. I don't know where Steve's at, though, by the way. I'd like to know. I hope he's still with us. I don't ever hear from Steve or what he's up to. I've been curious many times. I
haven't heard from him in years and years. Okay, but look, let's go back. Do you still, because I heard Ariel ask you too, do you still believe that Francis fumbled the bag?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Fumbled the bag, because I've never fully know what that meant. Like, did he make the wrong decision? Is how I always interpreted that.
Well, let me lay this out real quick.
Money-wise.
Let me lay this out to you real quick. $8 million is what they offered him to fight John Jones plus pay-per-view points. How many numbers? What do you think the numbers were if the two of them fought in pay-per-view points? 650.
Was so different now. It's so different than it was 10 years ago. But yes, okay. I believe the biggest fight the sport can make, and I know that's probably not debated now, but I think even then it was Jones versus Francis.
Give me some pay-per-view numbers. What do you think? 550, 650?
1.5?
No.
1.5.
No way.
Maybe. 1.5. I know what was projected for Francis. It was a projected all-in pay of $13 million. Now, who gave that projection and how accurate it would be, I suppose we'll never know, but that was supposedly what he would make for John Jones.
Okay, so let's say he made $13 million. He got offered $10 million for the Fury fight plus pay-per-view points. Well, let's go ahead and go to a real reporter who actually reported the real pay-per-view numbers, which were 11,500 on TV pay-per-views in the U.S., 56,000 on ESPN streaming. Those are your numbers.
Yeah.
You didn't make that. Normally, when pay-per-view points come into effect, what happens? You have to beat a benchmark. It has to beat 100,000 or 150. However your contract is negotiated, you have to hit a certain amount before I start even paying you out on your pay-per-view points. It's not like, when one person buys, I get $1 of it or I get $2. No. And it actually goes tier system. So if I get 100,000, I get like 50 cents or I get whatever it is on the 100,000. If it hits that. And then it goes on to 250. Then I get another probably $1.50 or $1 on top of that. So now I'm making 150. When it gets up to like 500 and 600, you're making close to $3, pretty much for pay-per-view points. But this didn't even do 100,000. Yeah. It didn't even do 100,000. So now maybe in the rematch they will. But some of the stuff that was talked about on the Ariel show with you and the back and forth was, did you fumble the bag? As of right now, just number wise, until we see the rematch between Fury and Ngannou, or Joshua and Ngannou, right now, yes, it looks like he fumbled the bag. And I love the fact that he took a chance on himself. I've done the same shit, and it didn't work out for me, but I've done the same shit. He did it, and it's remarkable what he did. No one's going to knock that. But here's the other thing is, what other fights does he have to make right now in the PFL for him?
Yeah. According to the PFL, none. I mean, Dom Davis came on and it was just very direct and said the only thing interesting for Francis in MMA is John Jones, which is a match that we can't do. And I appreciated that. I will tell you this, Josh, and I don't know if it quite answers your question, but I would be really curious, right? I mean, it's a lot like earlier when we were talking about the UFC buys Pride and says it's to get contracts, but that's just what they're saying. It's to take it off of pay-per-view. I would really be fascinated to know why Francis did that. I know that he's saying this was my childhood dream and I believe that I could beat him and I'm going to see it through. There could be a piece of the pie that's true to that, but it's also true that Francis and John Jones, as much as they're both pretending they want to fight each other, had the opportunity to fight each other, and John's hands aren't clean in this either. I mean, John's now coming out, he's calling Francis all sorts of names. He's called him the P word multiple times. Oh, yeah. Behind all those big muscles is nothing but a big... He didn't say a word when they were both under contract. He didn't say anything about Francis. He sat and he laid perfectly low, but Francis was the same way. He did not address John. He didn't build some kind of hype to that. And so I'm just saying, there is a question of most fighters would like to be an underdog. If you are a massive underdog, you can actually win in defeat. That doesn't happen the other way. I mean, Fury went out and won this fight and he's getting no credit. The underdog who competed compared to expectations.
Overachieved.
But meanwhile, it wouldn't be that same relief of pressure versus John Jones. John Jones, at the time they wanted to make that fight, had never fought above 205 pounds. He is meaningfully smaller, and the perception would have been that Francis could have dealt with him. And I'm just sharing, like, you know, was there something about that within this decision? Was it not a matter I'm taking on a bigger challenge? Was it in his mind, this is a lesser threat perception-wise to my reputation? I wouldn't know, but I think it's interesting.
I tell you this, I don't think he fumbled the bag. Now, if you want to say, did he end up with less money, and that's what your version of fumbling the bag is, okay, maybe he did. But fumbling the bag means that you made a mistake, and we don't know, just like what you're talking about.
The verdict's not out yet.
Exactly. Well, and we don't know exactly what was important to Francis, because the John Jones fight wasn't there. John was not a heavyweight at that point. And let's be honest, when you're talking about John, you know, we all know how good he is, but the type of fighter that's always given him problems is someone that's his size, someone that he can't big brother by putting his, you know, big reach out there. And if there's the other thing that's giving us problems, guys that can hit hard, he kind of ends up on his back foot a lot more. It's a little bit of a different fight for him. So when you take a look at, say, fumbling the bag, I don't think he fumbled the bag. I think he got what was important to him. And that was the freedom to do what he wanted, because he asked the UFC, let's do this together. Let me go do a boxing thing. You can be part of the promotion. He wanted them to be part of it. It wasn't like he's saying, oh, I don't want you to make money. I want you to be part of it. They told him no. And sometimes that freedom is worth every penny that you lost.
I think where you run, though, is the problem is that some of these fighters are like, look, I want to go do the boxing match, or I want to go do this outside and want to bring you guys along with me. And they say no, but they're like, why'd you do it for Conor? And I get why they did it for Conor. They understood at the time it was a huge deal. They also made a big bag of money off of that. But a lot of it had to do with the actual co-promotion between Showtime and them. They were able to elevate it to another level, doing their tour all around. The UFC helped bring that up too with the Conor situation. This fight would have done a lot better, I think, had the UFC been involved with Francis.
Oh, no doubt. The UFC is a marketing machine that would have made a huge difference if they were helping to market it. People would have ended up being a lot. I think more people were excited about this fight after it happened than I think before it happened, and that's based upon the performance of Francis Ngannou. You know, and you're going back and you're talking about, well, Conor did good. Look, let's just be honest. And I've watched that Conor fight too many times. I've watched it with the judges that actually judged the boxing match at the time, because, you know, I didn't agree with them. And, you know, Conor came out, he did well, he won rounds, but Floyd was controlling him and doing whatever he wanted. Floyd was never in trouble in that fight. Tyson was in trouble. Tyson got hurt. And we all know, you know, when you get hit by someone, you go, holy shit, that fucking hurt. It alters your opinion on what you want to do next. It's just part of it. And sometimes, even though you've been in there against guys that are good punchers, Deontay Wilder is a big puncher, you get hit by someone, you go, oh, and you can take a look at some of the punches that Francis was landing, and especially, you know, he'd do a high jab and a straight right to the body. It was having an effect on Tyson. He was having a problem with a guy that had good range, good length, and had power. just what it is.
Yeah, it's all true. It's really fascinating. And John, I do give Tyson a lot of credit, too. I know the story coming out of this. I've really never seen anything like this where a fight is more talked about and more celebrated, more discussed after it happened than it was before. I've never really seen this, but I do notice one thing. I notice the headlines are about Francis. They're not about Tyson. And all the accolades are going to Francis. And Francis' next fight is so incredibly sought after. Tyson's is so much less that they've actually taken it off the board and they've moved it. And I do give Tyson a lot of credit. I mean, there's a lot that he took on there, not to mention, I mean, not only just the outside forces that are saying, oh, this is going to be easy for you, which is never a great thing to hear from everybody. And, you know, all the way down to his father teasing Francis and saying, you know, how much he doesn't belong. But then Tyson having to get up off the canvas, you know, with 7 rounds more. 7 rounds to go deal with it, know what's in front of you, know what the potential is, and still have to find a way to get your hand raised. Tyson did a lot of really positive things in that match that he does have the right to be proud of.
Yeah.
What's your take on how involved Saudi Arabia and all these countries, Middle Eastern countries, are coming in right now and really putting money into sports? I mean, they did it with the Live Golf. They're doing it now with soccer. Now they're making
doing it with PFL.
They're doing it with PFL. They're doing it right now. They're trying to buy up all the actual live sport action. What's your take on that?
Well, I don't know that I overly have one. I know that got greatly politicized, particularly with the golf stuff. You know, it all goes back to that reporter who gets killed, and they've got to rehab their image, and they're choosing to do it through sport. And anybody that plays along with them doesn't care about the reporter. I don't know all of that stuff. There could probably be a reasonable argument there, but I've just never looked at it in those regards or to hold them in the same category. If Saudi Arabia is really passionate about having big sports on their soil for whatever reason, and they're willing to lose a fortune to do it, I don't know that I have an overly big thought. It's not sustainable, and I know people go, oh, it's endless money. That's not true, right? If you've got a balloon and the air is only going one way, it might not happen in your lifetime or even in your grandkids' life, but it will happen, that it will go to zero. There's, so I do think that needs to be looked at. I don't know what this celebratory factor in running a business that is not sustainable. I'm not really sure who's getting behind that unless they're directly receiving some of those funds, but I don't have a big opinion, Josh. If they're getting behind it and they want to do these things, the
reason why I asked is because like there was some of the Ariel talking with you on it goes, look, around like the 17-minute mark, you guys are talking, and he says they don't care, they've got endless money, they're going to keep putting these shows on. And I'm with you, is that not fighters, but businessmen, and they didn't become rich just by haps. Okay, like they're smart. They do good business deals. They understand how to make money off of whatever they do spend millions and billions on. They understand there's a market there to be made. So they're not just throwing endless money at things. Maybe they've come up short, but I look at them in terms of this. They understand that live sports right now after COVID are a huge thing because we were basically being held up by it during the times everyone was locked down. You know, they were just turning to sports the best they could, whatever was available and on TV. Fighting was one of those. And I think them jumping into the fight market is a big deal, but there's also got to be some sort of return on investment. And I think with Francis, because I had heard some of the comments with Ariel, he says, look, his next fight's going to be 20, 30, 40 million. You don't know. But Don Davis came out too, and he goes, look, there's no one really for him to fight in PFL. And the acquisition of Bellator would make sense because now you've got Ryan Bader, you've got Linton Vassell, you've got Moldavsky, you've got guys now in the heavyweight division that he could actually fight. That have decent names or have good names and have decent records or good records. You get into that, but if there's no one for you to fight, and I'm people that have the Saudi checkbook, why am I going to pay you 20, 30, 40 million when I know that the UFC, who has tons of money as well, is only willing to offer you 8? Business dealings aside, there's nowhere for you to go. I can pay you what I want to pay you, and you take it or leave it. I don't see a $30, $40 million payday in the future. Am I wrong?
No, you're definitely right. I mean, there could be an ability where, they just want that rematch with Fury so bad, and both of those guys could hold out. I mean, Fury was claiming, I don't know if it's accurate, that he got $50 million for that fight. In other interviews, he said it was $40 million. But just say that that's true or in the ballpark. I don't know that Fury's going to want to risk it, and even if he does want to risk it, he's smart enough to feint that he doesn't want to risk it. And all of a sudden, those numbers do go up, and how bad do they want it? I mean, that really is anybody's guess, but to the other side of it, to make believe that you can predict based on indicators or based on industry standards and norms, you can't. It's a very different thing. I've never seen anybody go out and come at this level knowing it's a loss, knowing this isn't sustainable, but I've got such an account. It's a very different situation. And when they take the victory lap for it, I don't know that they deserve the praise. If you win out and did something and it cost you $100 million to get it, it's
in a business sense. Hold on, in a business sense, I'll say you're right. They don't deserve the praise.
Yeah.
But in a sporting sense, maybe they do.
Well, and that's an interesting thing too, John. I mean, how much of it was a sporting event? I mean, just by example, the WBC title was not on the line, but the WBC president sat in the very front row.
Was there.
The WBC president stated Francis Ngannou will now be a top 10 ranked fighter. It's like, well, who are you going to have him replace? At the end of the day, he's 0-1.
He's 0-1.
Yeah, at the end of the day, he's never won a boxing match. I go look at your top 10. They've had 100 matches apiece. I'm including amateur records, of course. But they've won over 95% of their amateur and pro matches. How do you take a guy that's 0-1? You're going to have to pull one of those names off the top 10 to put this one in the top 10. I'm just sharing for you. It does seem to lose credibility. I don't know of a time a boxing champion has boxed, but the belt wasn't up, but the WBO president sat in the front. It's very, very weird.
There was a little bit of the bickering back and forth over the 3-fight contracts and whether they existed or not in boxing, and Saudi Arabian money will cover it and all this other stuff. I mean, can you kind of explain to me what you're getting to? Because I mean, and I know both.
I know what he was getting
that
to.
Our fights are 3-fight contracts. Boxers and promoters, whether it's Eddie Hearn or whoever else is promoting these fights, they're not going to invest in you fighting. Like if he was to fight Anthony Joshua, he's
going to have a return investment on
exactly.
That.
There needs to be something else. If you do beat my best guy, the one that brings me in my big cash cow, if you're going to beat him, I need to have you locked down. I can't just have you run off to the PFL. There needs to be some sort of conversation. And no promoter, not a smart one, would allow this to happen, and the deal, like, it was a one-off with the Saudi Arabia money. Some of the naysayers were saying that, well, Tyson was just using this fight. And I was one of them saying, I kind of feel like because he signed the Usyk fight too soon, he was using this fight to get warmed up for Usyk. And we didn't see the best Tyson Fury.
But it is normal in boxing for a boxer to have another fight after already set up. It is normal in the world of boxing. It's not normal in the world of MMA because the promoters are different. There's just a different system.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and the point that I was trying to make when I brought that up, so many people will say, well, this fight is so big, give him whatever he wants. You got to get this done. You can't lose it. Dana screwed up here. He should have got him. Just look at this. And it's like, well, hold on. They're always multi-fight contracts. They aren't done on a one-off. So you've got to figure out what you can give a guy for this one big fight that you've got. You don't know for sure how that's going to go. So you got to have him under contract to rematch it if that's what you would like to do, or to parlay that success into something else if that's what you like to do. But then when you lay that contract out, there's great thought that goes into it, which is, well, what if he loses? Like, there's one fight that I want for him, and it's this one. So if I give him too beautiful number, whatever comes next that isn't this one is not worth as much. But the athlete isn't going to sign the deal unless that next fight is accelerated from the previous fight. So there's just a lot of math that the promoter has to do. And that's the part that I was trying to explain. That is where things get very different. And a promoter might be willing, if he's got absolute confidence here, to go in and do a one-off, but not a promoter with distribution, not a promoter like, say, Eddie Hearn or Bob Arum, just to use some of the bigger names in the sport. They're going to have you secured, whether it's a rematch clause that's already built in or what you're going to do next. So it just becomes tough. If you're trying to copy what somebody else did, I'm just suggesting be very reserved in this. This is very outside of the culture and very outside of our industry standards. What happened with Francis and Tyson?
Well, you have three people that he could potentially fight next. You got Anthony Joshua, you've got Deontay Wilder, and you've got the rematch with Tyson Fury looming there. But seeing the pay-per-view numbers, obviously the second one's going to do a lot better now that you've seen him get dropped, take illegal elbows from Tyson Fury, keep going like it was no big deal. Like, if you're sitting on the outside looking in, who would you want to see him fight? And which one do you think is stylistically best made for him?
Yeah, well, it is definitely those three. Like the rematch with Fury would be of great interest to me for sure. I think realistically, Wilder is probably the one that could actually get locked up just because he's in that same free agent status. And that again, but that would specifically be in Saudi Arabia. Wilder thinking that I'm a free agent, that's not how promoters look at it. Promoters look at it as nobody can trust you. If you've left all my fellow promoters, I don't know how badly I want to come in and bring you in. I need to know that I have a team player. So now you got two non-team players that have found themselves. I think that that's very likely that they could do. I personally, and I think this is what you asked me, what I would like to see. I would like to see the Joshua fight. I think mainly because I'm fairly confident in Francis. The Francis that Fury dealt with, if that Francis shows up, I think that he does beat Joshua, and that would just be such a surprise to everything that I believe to be real. It would just make me question, how did I have this so wrong? How did I believe in the sweet science and the footwork and the combinations? Like, how did I believe you had to be a second-generation kid that started by 9 years old to have any chance at this level? It would make me question so many things that I was so sure about. That's the one that I would like to see.
Well, it's always easier to do something heavy.
I can tell you why you're sure about it. No. Look here, and here's the fact. Josh has done it. I've done it. You've done it. You've sparred with professional boxers, and they're a pain in the ass. They move a certain way because everything that you're doing in training is for boxing. It's about your footwork and your hands. That's what you work on. That's everything that you're doing. While in MMA, you're doing those things, and you're working on your kicks, and you're working on your elbows, and you're working on your ground and pound, and you're working on your wrestling, and there's so many things that you have to cover that you can't spend that same time on working on my footwork and my hands. And so when you go in and you spar a real boxer, you go, holy shit, they're hard for me to get to. Holy shit, they're always getting the angle on me. Holy shit, it becomes this nightmare that you just end up trying to survive as you're sparring. You're not trying to really get better, you're surviving. It just depends on how hard they're pushing. And so when you look at it and you've been there and you've done it, you go, this is gonna be a hard one for Francis to get into. He hasn't done boxing long enough. Tyson's grown up, his whole life has been boxing. So it's understandable why you look at it that way.
And Francis did not throw up very many air balls. I mean, that was a surprise too. I didn't question Francis's power, and people talk about he's got all this power. It's like, well, you want to know how much power he has? He has enough power. Like, there's a number of guys that if they hit you in the right spot, you're going to be going down when you're at that size. I just didn't think he could be able to touch him. I mean, I've been in that spot.
Same thing.
Yeah, where you're throwing, and it's like it's nothing for them. They know when to pull. They know when to go this way. Highest level guy that I've ever had a chance to strike with was Joe Schilling, and it was a disaster. Like, the rhythm that he had was such a lesson for me in that that I didn't even know that existed. And then back to trying to touch him, even when it was my turn to go, that wasn't going to happen. It was amazing. It was Francis's accuracy was the biggest surprise for me from an X's and O's standpoint in that whole fight. How many times he reached out and touched something, whether it was a body or a head, was really remarkable.
Yeah, because when you look at some of Tyson Fury's past fights, I mean, he'll put himself in the corner and just allow you to throw punches, and he'll roll and he'll come underneath and
he'll Ali it.
Yeah, so he'll do the Ali act on you, and he was getting touched quite a bit. And we talked about this last night with Eric Nixick. The switching of stances, I think, was very important in this fight because it opened up a whole new game that I don't think Tyson Fury was prepared for. Like, oh wait, he's gonna throw left-handed. Oh wait, he's switching back to right-handed. So now you've got to deal with this guy who's got power in both hands. The punches are coming from different angles, and the way I dip changes things. I mean, were you able to catch on to that?
Oh yeah. No, the whole thing was a surprise. I mean, right when that bell rang and Francis is the one that came across the ring, got into range and stayed there. That is not something I would have predicted. I thought Francis knew the deal, which is the only victory here is going to be a moral victory. And a moral victory is achieved by each second that you are still alive out there. If you could get to 3 rounds, wow. If you could get to the 5th round, you'd have exceeded everybody's expectations by a factor of 4 whole rounds. So it was one of those things where Francis believed enough of himself. I mean, he didn't know what was going to happen any more than we, all saw it after the fact. And he came right out there, stood right into range. He landed the first shot. He was moving on his feet. It was really incredible. Fury had this one combination. He started with a feint, then he came outside with the hook to come right down the middle with a straight. A very basic one, but he did it perfect. He did the feint. He came outside. He got the reaction with the hand. He threw. Neither one of them touched Francis. In fact, that was the Fury, the combination that Fury threw just before Francis came back and put him down. And it's like, how are you not touching that guy? How is this not working? It wasn't these beautiful big movements or ducks or pulls. It was just real slight. He rolled this way, rolled this way, blocked them both, came back as though he was the one that was a second-generation lifetime boxer. It was really stunning what happened.
I have this notion, maybe I'm just, because I'm an MMA fighter, I'm a little biased, but I feel like because we still train boxing, and we train wrestling, jiu-jitsu, whatever it is, in the sambo, which you apparently think is a made-up sport. We train all these things, okay? But when now if you take all the other things away and just focus on just the boxing, we feel so much more free. And I saw that a little bit from Francis. Like, I don't have to worry about defending a takedown. I can just throw my hands recklessly or carelessly or just without a care, just concern, just get back defensively. I saw that relaxation in him, it seemed like, and I felt like that made a huge difference in his abilities to stand on there and trade with Francis, or not with Fury.
Yeah. No, I saw that too. I have always dismissed what Francis has done. I've always dismissed, like, I'll give you an example. I happened to rewatch it this morning because it came to me on a feed, but it was Francis versus Cain Velasquez. Like, that was a weird match. It was really quick, and Cain was saying his knee went out, but every time I see Francis do something, I chalk it up to that. Or, I think he lifted Overeem off the ground with a punch one time, and it was like, well, but he caught him in that. Or I've always been quick to do that. Like, he's been so dominant, and it's almost a surprise how quick and easy he can come across the cage and take out somebody like Rosenstruck, who was 27-3 in professional kickboxing career, and Francis can just walk out there and dispose of him. And I guess I share that with you because now I got to go back and look at all those things that I thought, well, he caught him. Oh, he got lucky. Oh, he got lucky again. And realize, no, he did not. He has a confidence in himself. He knows what he can do well, and he's not afraid, regardless of experience of the opponent. He's not afraid to go out there and trust and gamble on himself. It's a very interesting athlete.
Well, how much of that do you think comes from the fact that, he came from working in the mines, he came from nothing. Look, I've been to the worst place in the world. I've been to the worst. I've been to the all-time low. I can't go any further. Whatever I choose to do right now I'm already winning in life. And that's a mentality that I honestly believe a lot of MMA fighters have. They've come from such a shit show of a lifestyle that anything they do beyond, winning their first fight, second fight, it just means I've won at life. I'm way ahead of where everyone thought I was supposed to be. And that mentality carries a lot of these guys to that next level.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know how much of that story that's been reported, I don't know how much of that I believe to be true as much as just a story and good marketing. I got a friend that went into the wine business, and he was explaining to me, growing the grapes and getting the labels and selling your wine is not nearly as important as the BS backstory that you have to put out. The BS backstory about my aunt in Italy before coming over on a boat, and the only thing she had
saved this vine
is a recipe tucked into her sock by her great-grandfather who said, get to America and share this with you. Some of that stuff is a little bit tough to believe. And most of those stories, Francis has done an interesting thing, which is to telling how nobody ever believed in him. And I'm looking at it going, Francis, you might have felt that way, but you're 6'5" and you're 300 pounds of muscle that you didn't earn. You didn't go out and work out for it or even have the respect for your own career to put a needle in your ass every now and then like I did. You're 300. You're the biggest and you're the strongest of the entire village. I don't think your idea that nobody believed you could whip somebody else's ass is true. So I do think it's a part of the story. Josh, we saw this 2 times, Brian Stan and Tim Kennedy. And in our sport, in the locker room, before the fight is such an important moment. And you will know the difference between fighters based on how they can deal with that moment and knowing that this event is imminent. And those 2 guys were so relaxed because of what they actually have seen, because of jumping out of airplanes with enemies shooting at them, being face to face with tanks and
with real
grenades.
Death.
Yeah. So I do think there's a real truth to what you're saying, but I also think you just have a superior athlete. Ray Lewis went on a PFL and did an interview, and I was part of the commentator team. And Ray Lewis, who was not only a world champion, but he was the captain of the team when they won the world championship, said, well, Francis, somebody brought him up. I think Randy had brought him up, but he said, oh man, that's just a different animal. He said, I have not seen a human like that. You could put Francis on an NFL football field in any position today, and he would be elite. And that's a really big compliment coming from somebody like Ray Lewis, who's not really got a history of paying big compliments. But I think there might be a truth to it. Now that what we've seen, like maybe that is one of the understandable parts about how this happened. You have a really superior athlete. I could legitimately see Francis going to being an outside linebacker. Like in my mind, that's not an unbelievable thing. I could not see Fury doing that. And just to share with you, like I do think that we have a very different level of athlete that does help to explain how this happened.
I'm going to tell you, I refereed one of Francis Ngannou's fights. He won by Kimura, okay? And I got him up and I said, what the fuck was that? I was like, what was it? He goes, what? And I go, you're not supposed to do that, right? I said, congratulations, right? It's like... I was like, the one time, and you didn't even punch him. Yeah. You just fucking take him down, and okay.
John's mad because he's finally got he's got the front row view of watching someone get knocked out, and you go and take him down and grapple.
I'm going to see someone's head launched into the 3rd row, and nope, he takes him down and submits him. I'm like, oh, son of a bitch.
Well, Chael, I'm going to get you out of here on this, but I want to have a little. Go ahead. Sorry, John.
I got one more before you do this. I have one question for you. Have you and Ariel talked since that interview?
Yes. Ariel asked me if I could come. In fact, it involves you guys. He asked me if I would come on today, and I told him I'm actually going to be with John and Josh. Ariel films right now.
That did not make him happy.
Well, it didn't. And he said, well, this is kind of bothering me, and I've gotten a lot of message about it, and I just think the quicker we can get back. He said, I'm not trying to capitalize on this. I just, on a personal note, and there is something that I think is relevant, which is Ariel, and this is... as a Jewish person, he is under stresses right now. He is under emotional. They did a report on CNN the other day that Jewish gun sales are at an all-time high, like through the roof. And I just share that because there are some very real things that I would be very understanding to. But I need to get that apology. Like, I will accept the apology, but I haven't been given the apology. So... And just to tell you, I'm headed for New York tomorrow, and the next time Ariel films, aside from today, will be Wednesday. So there's also, an effort where I've been invited to come into studio and said, man, I would do that. I just don't know the schedule yet. So, to that extent, yes, we talk.
Good.
We've kind of had our own little back and forth with him here and there and stuff. I don't like, for me with him, I know that he's good at his job. He does a good job. Some things though, it just seems a little, I don't know how to put it, but it's off. It's off-putting, I guess, in some ways. And when the conversation led to something about, like, if I was there, I would just choke you or something. Well, then why don't you come down here and do it? And it was like, come on, man. Like those are things that are just don't need to be said.
Sure.
And just. No. And I think that's from, as a fighter.
That's when it gets silly.
Yeah, that's when it gets silly. Just like, let's just have a conversation. Let's not get to that point where it should be like that. And I know if you're sitting in the same room with him, you guys will work it out. I have no ill will towards him. I think he does a good job at his job. He does a really good job. And I occasionally will catch a show that I think is really good. Especially when it's someone that I'm really,
like yours.
I'm really interested in. Well, that I'm really interested in listening to, and he's got a good deal going on. So I wish him nothing but the best. And I get what you're saying. He's got a lot, I think, going on also too, being Jewish and all the other things that are going on around the world. That there's a lot of things going on that people are sending to him. So I wish him nothing but the very best. But it was kind of just some of the things that were reported. Dave Meltzer gave out the numbers. They did 67,500 on the pay-per-view, so it didn't do well. So there's no, in terms of, he could make up to 20. That's absolutely not true. He made the 10 million. That's pretty much what he's going to make, which is good. That was still more than the 8 million that the UFC was going to offer him. It was going to offer Francis. But John Jones and Francis would have done, I think, at least over 500,000 pay-per-view buys.
Sure.
I think it would have done over that. I would have pushed it maybe closer to about 650, maybe
More
to
than
7.
that.
I would have pushed it to
More than
650 to 750, somewhere around there. Only based on the fact because the new pay-per-view model it sucks. People just are not tuning in. They're streaming it on their own. They're not buying them.
They also don't have the money anymore.
Well, John Jones, I don't think has ever done over $1 million except for the first DC fight or the second one. He's only done over $1 million one time, I believe. And so that's it. So to think that he was going to get over $1 million with Francis, I don't think it would have happened, especially now. That was DC and John years ago.
Yeah.
And so to say that he would go over $1 million, I don't think so. So if it worked out to be Francis was going to make 13, 14, okay, fine. But then they paid him $10 million to fight Fury on the pay-per-view numbers that didn't do 100,000. Who's to say he would have made anything? He would have just made the 10 million.
Sure.
This did open up the door though for him to get a rematch. And those numbers will be better. Still don't think they're going to break 500,000. I still don't think it, and maybe he'll make more. But if I am Saudi Arabia, I'm not thinking to myself, let's pay this guy 20, 30, 40 million when I know you have your own president came out and said there's no one for him to fight right now in the PFL, basically until if they do acquire Bellator, when you have Ryan Bader, Litton Vassell, Moldavsky, you've got fighters he can fight then. But until then, we don't have anyone for him to fight. So why would I pay him more than what the UFC or what we paid him last time of $10 million? I would say, look, let's pay him 15 because we really want it. Maybe up to 20. Who knows? Or we give you 15 plus the pay-per-view because we know the pay-per-view numbers are going to do better this time around. Just the numbers that were given that day could be frustrating. And when you were sitting there talking, I could hear the frustration in your voice when the numbers were being thrown around, and it just wasn't factual. And so those are the numbers that were reported by Dave Meltzer, who is a very damn good reporter.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I felt like there was even just basic logic that would let us know it didn't do well, such as it was 11 in the morning where I live. That pay-per-views for $80 simply just don't begin at 11 in the morning. So it wasn't even a commentary on the match itself but it was very difficult to believe that a pay-per-view, that's the most expensive pay-per-view that I personally have seen, not to mention at 11 in the morning, which I've never seen. Of course, you're not going to have a record number with that.
Okay, I'm going to get you out of here on this, though. I got to end it with some comedy here and some truth, though, by the way. Your style is getting a lot better. You got a light blue bad guy ink, and you're wearing it with a casual shirt today, which I like. You didn't go over the top. Okay, normally you have
I think the shirt and the bad guy ink match.
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to get at.
He color coordinated.
And he also had his porn star glasses on earlier. He took them off right before because he knew it was a little bit too much. And I actually love the fact that he took them off because it would have been too much had he carried that in. But, buddy, I love what you're doing with your style, but go ahead. Shower me some praise. Give me some praise, please.
See, it's all about him.
My stylistic mentor is Josh Thomson, who took me under his wing one day and said, hey, couple of changes that you need to make. And I listened, and I've made those changes, so I present a compliment. Now, I got to tell you, I took these glasses off because they kind of embarrass me. Like, it's a kind of guy that would wear a dark glasses indoor. I'm not that kind of guy, but these are prescription. I have a hard time seeing anything if I don't have these on, and they do have a little tint to them. So, yes, I guess the porn star is a fair claim, but I actually need them to see.
Keep it coming. No. But
it's over.
I love it though. But yeah, great addition. I like the bad guy ink, the new one. I like that. Very nice. And the color of the shirt, and that goes together. I love the studio, man. You're doing, and by the way, your shows.
I love the bars, the jail bars.
Thank you for that.
You absolutely need to just stay in that room. That's perfect for you.
I appreciate it. It was great to see both of you guys. Thanks, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Great seeing you, brother.
Best of luck, my man.
I want to tell everyone, thank you very much, Chael. Thanks for coming on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only, the American bad guy right there, Chael P. Sonnen. Well, I want to thank Chael Sonnen for coming on the show. He had a very intense, and I mean intense, interview with Ariel Helwani. There's a lot of things going on there, and it actually got bad. And I'm glad that they're hashing it out, because Chael is trying to talk about business while I think Ariel's talking about things from the heart. A little bit different, and it's the way you just look at things. But both guys, good guys, and Chael. Man, Chael is everywhere doing everything, and he just keeps on marching on. He's everywhere. And being the fact that you've got to now get him dressed the right way. Come on. Dude.
Well, I mean, have you seen his wife? He's got to keep up with the, with the
dude,
looks.
His wife is, you were talking levels.
Yeah,
he
levels above him is what she is.
Yes.
He's got two beautiful children, so he's got to stay on his A game. So just give him, spend a little money, look the part. You don't got to worry about staying in shape as much, as long as you're looking the part. Okay, and he's got it down. He's getting it down, anyways. I should say. We got a couple little tweaks here and there to make. I mean, he's got to stop buying shoes and wearing them without socks. It's just kind of a little weird to me. All right, but I mean, he does wear those little booty, what do they call those little nylon?
Little half socks.
Little half socks.
Little half socks.
Yeah, it's a little strange to me. I mean, I've never got into that, but I understand it.
You're his fashion coordinator.
I am.
Take charge.
I know, but I mean, you
charge,
can't be an American gangster and then wear those little foo-foo socks. It just doesn't happen. Look, he obviously had a little bit of the back and forth with Ariel on his show, but I didn't want to make it about that, but I just wanted to make it more about the numbers and the numbers in which Fumbling the Bag and all those things came into consideration. It's yet to be determined. And when we were talking leading up to the fight, I said, look, all he's got to do is drop in terms of Francis. If he drops him, rocks him, wobbles Tyson Fury, there's a conversation to be had now on what he can do against any other fighter who is lesser than a Tyson Fury, which is an Anthony Joshua, which is a Deontay Wilder, which is Anthony Ruiz, any of those guys. There's a conversation.
Did you say Anthony Ruiz? Yeah,
Andy. Sorry, my bad.
Go ahead.
There's a conversation to be had about him fighting somebody else, and now those numbers will come, and people will want to see. They're going to pay. Now, Saudi Arabia could pay all this money. They could. They very well could. But just let's not get caught up in the fact that they've got endless money to burn. They are still smart with their money. They know what they want. Sure. They started the Live Golf thing for a reason. To be competitive, to get themselves into a room, to negotiate with the PGA Golf Tour. And that's exactly what they did.
And guess what? It worked.
And that's what I'm getting at is my point is they have tried multiple times to buy into certain major organizations. And then some of them have been able to buy into the UFC. And they've put themselves in these areas because they are smart businessmen. They're not just burning money. They want to see a return on their investment. And that's where I was getting at that in terms of, he made this much money and the numbers. Well, like I said, Dave Meltzer has reported the numbers are 67,500. And Dave's a great lawyer.
He's pretty goddamn accurate with what he comes out with. Dave doesn't put out bad numbers. So that's about what they were. Yep. It might be a little bit different, but not much.
I'm going to sit up here and say I was wrong. I was saying around 350 to 450 the first time we talked about it. You said about 600, 650 is what we thought. I thought it was going to get about 400.
I actually thought it would get more.
Yeah, I thought so too.
I thought there got to the point where there was a lot of interest in the fight.
Yeah. But I think Chael brought up a good point though. Boxing people are different than MMA fans. They want to pay for the best to fight the best. And them not knowing who the MMA guy is, because they don't watch, a lot of them don't watch, they don't care. But now you're going to get that if they do end up doing the rematch. Yeah. So you're going to get those boxing casuals.
This is the guy that went to 10 with Tyson and
but then
came away with a split decision loss. But
the other thing is
put him on his
having
ass.
them come in at 11 a.m. or 2 o'clock in the afternoon to watch this fight. They're like, we're good against this guy. He's going to probably just mop some money grab. Yeah. That's how boxing people were thinking of it.
Sure.
MMA people, we watch it because we love them. We love Francis. We want to see him. We want to see him. We want to see round 3. That's what we wanted to see. We got what we paid for. Yeah. So
we did.
I wish Francis nothing but the best. And Chael, I'm looking forward to seeing the show where they make up and see what happens from there. But I wish nothing but the best for Ariel. I know I dig on him a little bit here and there, and I do it because I have years and years of dealing.
You do it you do it because you have to.
Well, I've had years and years of being around Ariel and doing interviews with Ariel and all these things. And so I understand. And look, it comes out of just, I've never been one to really just beat around the bush. And if I say what's on my mind, especially when it comes to these type of scenarios and situations, and I've done it to him in person also, like he was telling Chael, just do it here and come here. And well, I've done it to him in person, and he doesn't like that. So I've had these conversations with him, and I want him to be successful. It makes the sport successful when he's successful. Anybody that comes in and does podcasts about MMA, I want to grow this sport. We are pretty much one of the only podcasts that talk about every promotion. PFL, Bellator, One, championships. We do the best we can to talk about everything we can in combat sports, but mainly MMA.
We're only two guys with no staff.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. We've got one producer. We have one guy.
We don't have people feeding us this stuff, right? It's we got to watch it, and it takes a lot of time. Yep.
I agree.
It's tough,
but it was a great interview, and it was great having Chael on. You know, Uncle Chael is the man. Gotta appreciate it.
Yeah, he's just fun to listen to. Look, he's a lot smarter than people realize about the business side of the sport. Yeah. He understands it. He dealt with it, and it's hard to get past it when you're trying to tell him he's wrong, because he's really not.
Right. Yep. He may not deliver it the way you want him to deliver it, but he can be on point when he wants to be on point about something.
That's it.
Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed that interview. And John, go ahead, take us away, bud.
For everyone, I hope you enjoyed Mr. Sonnen, and I hope that we do get to see him hopefully November 17th in Chicago, something we talked about. But for everyone out there, I hope you enjoyed that interview. We got other ones coming your way, so tune in to the Weighing In podcast, and we will see you.